gain research labs. The trends from the Australia shows a steep decline from the first week of March to leading to almost zero bookings in April. The first casualty of COVID-19 in Australia happened on March 1st, and the restrictions started from thereafter, from the second week, which explains the steep decline. The trend from New Zealand shows a gradual decline starting a week prior to compare to Australia. As New Zealand had their first reported case on 28th of Feb, and from 26th of March, there was level 4 a lockdown, which was implemented by the government, which led to zero bookings in April. Moving on, the major cities, if I talk about Canberra, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide, they've seen a slight growth in the last week of Feb, but post that there has been a steep decline, which was also shown in the country figures. Whereas more touristic destinations like Surfers Paradise and Sydney did see the decline a week prior. For New Zealand, Auckland, Christchurch, and Wellington followed the country pattern, where there was a gradual decline since mid-Feb, whereas Rotorua and Queenstown saw a sudden spike in the second week of Feb, but following the first corona case, there was a steep decline, which came in till March end, whereas it's falling across in April as well. Across hotel segments, we did see an increase in the European brands in the last week of Feb in Australia, but then there was a sudden steep decline starting from first week of March and second week, whereas the UK, US, and local brands have shown a steady decline since the first week of Feb itself. Sorry, the last week of Feb itself till March end. For New Zealand, the UK and Europe-based chains saw a gradual decline in the month of Feb, March, and April, whereas the US brands remained flat, which gradually led to no bookings at all in April. But the local brands suffered the most, where they have been struggling since the first week of Feb, where we see almost no bookings from them at all. And there were certain phases where there were some bookings, but majorly, if you see, there were no bookings at all. So through this crisis, we are seeing a lot of positivity during the COVID-19, and the hope and inspiration in these challenging times are as follows. So we speak about the various hospitality companies opening up their hotels to all the medical staff to stay in quarantine. Quest Hotels, in fact, also converted the service apartments into quarantine locations. Just before this call, I was speaking with Shankar, and Shankar just mentioned that they are providing PPE kits and the masks to all the medical staff. So they'll be donating that. So good job on that, Shankar and the Arise Hotels team. Airbnb has also hosted a lot of frontline workers. We are seeing flight credits being given by Qantas. So all the cancellations are now moving into flight credits that are going for across almost 1 year. And a lot of rescue flights and protective equipment carriage is also happening around this time. Another positive news that we've recently seen in Australia and New Zealand is the fact that the number of recovered patients have outnumbered the number of active cases, so which is leading to more positivity. And we expect it to see the business open up sooner than later. On to you, Andy, for the next round.
Thanks, Ashmit. It's really interesting to see a timeline of the effect actually that has had on hospitality here. COVID-19, how many news updates have you had since morning? By the time we finish this webinar, you'll probably need some catching up to do, and you'll see what you've missed. As we all know, the coronavirus has been in the headlines for over 2 months now, and the reality that social distancing is here to stay until a vaccine is found has finally started to sink in. The Australian Bureau of Statistics, or the ABS, released its second round of data, which provides information on the impacts due to COVID-19. Their findings revealed that the pandemic actually has forced a staggering 70% of businesses in hospitality sector to reduce the hours of their staff, and 43% of their either lay off the workers or place them on unpaid leave. When you compare that to other industries, nowhere is the impact more apparent than in the hospitality sector. So today, I will be asking our influential panel their views on how to overcome these unexpected challenging times and recover. One thing that I wanted to highlight here and acknowledge here is the remarkable resilience shown by the hospitality community. Uh, I mean, just like Shankar basically and their group, they have done over here at the moment as well. Like you only need to open a single social media channel to see some of the incredible innovative ways some of these operators are choosing to tackle the issue head on. On the other hand, we've seen some amazing acts of kindness and generosity, like industry veterans reaching out to help their and support their fellow colleagues who've lost their jobs, or to hotels opening their doors for those living on the streets. And then we have had those restaurants offering free meals to laid off workers and those in most of the need. I mean, these are just a few examples how the community is doing something in their right in their own way, and all these efforts are also meaningful. So let's move on to the Q&A session. Our first question for our panelists is, what are the phase-wise changes that are expected in near future for travel and hospitality ecosystem? James, I would like to start with you. So when these travel restrictions are lifted, what should we really expect?
Thanks, Andy, and hi everyone. Hope you're keeping safe. Certainly, when we are hoping for a quick recovery, but our current expectations is the travel industry will have a relatively slow recovery as travellers become maybe more wary about where they go, what they do, and the kind of experiences they have. We're expecting, like most would have seen, that the domestic market will come back, and we're expecting that it'll be led by the corporate travel segment. However, when leisure comes on, we expect the leisure segment to grow quite well. We're seeing something that's really important to us right now, and we see as a place that we're leveraging is that focus around customer service and customer centricity in what we do. We've been starting to work with even customers of other travel companies all around the world and offering our services to help people during these difficult times, and also expect that as people's experiences have been somewhat challenging, that we'll find customers really expect a high level of service. So yeah, I think from us, we're expecting domestic to come back. We expect fairly soon after that that we'd start seeing trans-Tasman, so Australia and New Zealand, starting to operate as well, which will start to open up some more opportunities in that space. Thanks, Andy.
Sorry, yes. So it's really interesting to see that from your standpoint, the domestic corporate will be the first one to return back again. However, we'll probably see a slower growth in terms of leisure. But if we can concentrate on customer service and being customer centric, perhaps that will be the biggest strength for us to return back into the game, I believe. Peter, from a technological standpoint, we know that our industry is very sensitive to changes and trends in the operating environment. So what changes will be expected on that front?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anand. It's nice to be participating today. So interestingly, what we're seeing is, despite the fact that people may be averse to change when it comes to technology, we're starting to see a slow increase in the number of clients or prospective clients reaching out to us who are investigating their options at the moment. Because what I think a lot of people have found themselves with is more time than they're used to. Everyone knows day-to-day operation of a hotel is incredibly busy. There's so many things to get done each day. So the thought of a technology enhancement project kind of gets pushed to the side. So what we are seeing is now that people do have the time, they're starting to work with their existing vendors to see what they can do to get the most out of their software. Because what we do see is when we look at how people use our system as well, they may only be using 30 or 40 or 50% of the software's functionality, and there may be additional functionality in there that will help benefit them in the recovery process. And conversely, we're seeing people who have the time and now starting to look at what options are available out there to really curate and refine their technology ecosystem. And of course, a number of PMS vendors and technology partners are now offering lots of incentives to try and help people and assist them through that change process. And that may come through subscription fee relief or discounted onboarding costs. So, despite the fact that, the occupancy is grim at the moment, people are using this time to the maximum benefit for their business. So post-COVID, they're in the best possible position technologically to be able to recover. And second to that as well, I would say that as travel restrictions are lifted slowly, a lot of hoteliers will be competing for a really limited amount of business. So it's probably more important than ever that you have a really robust and fluid marketing and revenue strategy, because no one really knows what it's going to look like in terms of the recovery. So making sure that you have the right idea in how you want to market your product, putting it in front of the right people, and making sure that you have the ability to change that as the market changes, I think will be incredibly important. And technology can play an important part of that process for you.
Thanks, Peter. So the baseline would be sort of utilizing this downtime now at the moment to your advantage in terms of self-learning or trying to even perhaps season as to what technological advancements that you're sort of using now at the moment and polish those skills together with marketing and revenue strategies put together basically will be the way forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's never been a better time, unfortunately, but with the abundance of time that people have now at the moment, they can invest the time and energy that's needed to look into those things.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to our second question. So our second question is, what are the new sources of demand, or where should we really see, or what should we really foresee in terms of market demand? Manav, I would like to ask you, knowing that we will be looking at a completely different hospitality landscape, how and which way should we be looking from here?
Thanks, Anand. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So I think, as James was mentioning in regards to the recovery, the domestic market is what's going to be opening up first. But I think even before that, there'll be a focus on local, state, or interstate travel. I think all of us are ready for the next getaway, whether it be off to a wine region or a city getaway for an extended stay. So packages, staycations, these would be the immediate new sources of demand. A focus on these areas is going to be the immediate push once we're allowed to, or once things come back to a form of normality. But then also if you're looking internally or in-house and understanding if you have food and beverage outlets, are you selling at all touch points to your customers? What touch points are you encountering with your customers along the journey? Are you touching base, or are you selling your F&B outlets at the time of booking, pre-arrival, at check-in, during your stay or during their stay, and then even post-stay for their next visit? Also, looking at your segmentation, and if there was a specific segment or segment that you weren't driving, is it now certainly a good time to relook at that and turn those on? So, as I mentioned earlier, with packages and staycations, is there an opportunity to turn those on, participating in the stay in a form of stay and save deals, driving a form of new or more, or gaining more share of corporate business with value adds instead of dropping rates. Looking for the domestic leisure groups that are around in market when things come back to a form of normality. In looking at government businesses or driving government business, looking at wholesale allotments for operators that can drive a form of volume or share into your properties, but also leveraging your personal and company network, whether that be with vendors and suppliers, and pushing a form of family and friends special or employee special that your networks can utilize once we're allowed to start to travel again. And finally, looking at your terms and conditions, online and offline. It's going to be a pure occupancy-driven strategy once we're allowed to come back. And even challenging the norm of cancellation policies and guaranteed policies, and even no-show policies. Do you need a 48-hour policy? Maybe remove that or reduce it to like a 6 p.m. release, or even no guaranteed or cancellation policy.
Thanks, Manav. So just to summarize, basically, you think it's more of a state travel and then interstate travel that will probably see a bit of a rise or pickup, basically, in terms of people traveling. Also, staycations may be more popular in the near future. And again, reevaluating your touch points in terms of the stay journey of your guests, basically, which probably will be a major drive force, perhaps, to look at the moment when things sort of normalize as well.
Yep, correct.
Wonderful. Shankar, with your vast experience across all the hotels and resorts, what are the cues that will help hoteliers in identifying the new demand?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think there'll definitely be increase in the domestic travel. I think leisure will be popular because we got to remember that, the whole world is in a lockdown. So everyone who is in a lockdown would like to travel or get away from home as soon as they get an opportunity. So we've got no doubt that domestic will return first. People who need to travel on business will combine business with leisure, take their family away. So I reckon demand for our 2-bedrooms and 3-bedroom rooms and the larger rooms will increase when the domestic travel opens up a bit. But I think we also need to remember that as an industry, we should expect the unexpected and be ready to and prepare to change gears quickly, because trust me, nobody knows how it's going to behave in terms of patterns, etc. Because it's a once in, I think, 100+ years or whatever, whenever the first, the previous, Spanish, event happened, but we don't have any event to compare it with. So I think we need to be ready to change gears very, very quickly based on what we see in real time. That's going to be very important, I think, and pricing for a post-event period. So we need to be mindful that demand is going to be strong for sure. So don't drop your rates. Hold them when the domestic travel opens up, because there will be last-minute travel that will come. So based on what we are hearing from various governments, planning to open up travel, but keeping international travel still stopped. Domestic will open up first, and corporates will start traveling. We believe that corporates will also be a bit soft comparatively, because people have learned how to work better digitally using these various tools like we are using today. So these tools will be more used in future as well, at least in the short term and medium term. But we believe leisure will come back and domestic will be strong. But do expect the unexpected and be ready to change gears.
Thanks, Shankar. So I think from your thoughts, they absolutely resonate with Manav as well over here. And when you say expect the unexpected, what we really mean here is being flexible as to being more adaptable to the current situation as this situation itself is evolving. So we sort of need to embrace it as it comes because no one really knows these answers, isn't it?
I was also saying that, once we are in that period, right? So let's say the domestic travel has opened up, patterns, it'll be interesting to observe those patterns real time and be ready to change gears at that time. So right. Your strategies that you deploy right now for post domestic travel open up, you may need to change them as you are live in that period because nobody right. knows how that's going to behave.
Right. So a more agile approach perhaps there as well, and quick to react as well once it sort of opens up.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Shankar. Let's move on to our next question. Okay, so in terms of current behaviors, so current behaviors and the expectations in future from micro markets that we can expect and from other travel segments. So let's funnel this question from a broader perspective of the travel segment to more of a niche or distinct markets. James, at Flight Center and Travel Junction, you have a range of services from hotels, packages, flight bookings, and so on. Can you tell us what the current behavior has been till this point and what can be expected in near future, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the current behaviour has been quite mixed. Customers very often choosing to book individual components of a travel itinerary with different operators, and I think having seen the impact that this crisis has had on both the industry but also those customers, we're expecting that more packaged offering will be a primary part of what we sell. In a lot of respects, especially in the domestic market, travel agencies are a little bit like selling, insurance, if you like. It's a bit hard to explain all the things you get by booking with a travel agency until you actually need them. And I think I touched on it before, but that idea of customer centricity is important, and from being able to ensure that we deliver the right customer experience both to our leisure and corporate customers is absolutely paramount to getting through this with a successful business on the other side. I think what we have seen recently, which has been quite good for some hoteliers especially, is some of the work we've been working on with the state-based health organisations to provide quarantine hotels. And I think for a lot of those hoteliers, that's been definitely a lifeline, albeit a low rate, but certainly a lifeline to help some of those hotels survive. So I think currently, obviously, we're not immune to this. So we're experiencing significant downturn in booking, but we definitely see that more packaged offering coming forward. We also see a lot more experiential style travel being what customers are looking for. I think everyone will attest to sitting at home. The flop and drop style holidays we don't see as being as popular, if you like, as people who want to have touring day tours and etc. tacked on to their total holidays. So I think experiential travel is definitely something that we'll see grow in the future.
Thanks, James. So experiential travel and packaging, perhaps that's probably the trends that we will be seeing more so moving forward. And again, also having the time right now at the moment at our hands, basically, and dreaming about those locations at the moment that we always wanted to go. I think the urge to sort of go out there and customize those trips probably will be even more stronger, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks, James. Talking about micro segments, Manav, talking about micro markets, how will they be relevant in the current scenario, you think?
Well, I think you're like I mentioned earlier, and what we've been discussing thus far. There's going to be a shift or a change of expectations with with a lot more focused or health and wellness, leisure, family getaway type of travel. That's going to be the immediate shift or change. There'll be limited interstate travel to start with from a leisure point of view, and then from the business sector, once things open up a little bit more, it'll be more of a need to travel. So the business sector, the corporates will have to travel. These are the segments. These segment will have to do their traveling. Continuing on from a domestic travel point of view, we will see a change of behavior of how our market segments have performed pre-COVID-19 and even now, the phase we're going through now, and then post as well. There'll be a big change of how the segments have performed, demand as well. And teams will really need to analyze and understand the type of customers coming through the doors in the first few days once things open up. That will be paramount to understanding the shifts in market segment behavior and then allowing you to tailor your segment strategies accordingly. There will be longer lead times will either be longer or shorter than normal for most corporate and some leisure segments. And one thing I recall during the GFC, just as an example, was once we were getting out of the GFC back in 2009, the leisure segments, we found leisure segments had a shorter lead time than normal or than prior GFC. So that's something there as well. And also, I also challenge the non-refundable rate product. Is there an opportunity to pause that or close that off to embrace flexibility and use it to build a form of brand loyalty during the time? I think also from a corporate point of view, once you get into corporate season, how that will look, but most importantly, there'll be a bit more information around the cleaning and sanitization of hotels in the RFPs coming through.
Great, thank you. So the key points to take away, probably I would say, is to analyze and react, perhaps as well as to what your past and previous strategies have been. And also to look at your aspects in terms of, the terms of booking conditions, perhaps, and also the corporate sort of segments as well, how they would be reacting in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Manav. So when we talk about micro segments and micro markets, one thing that comes to my mind is that it is all of your properties, like each of your properties are so different and unique. What I really like about them is the natural setting that they sit in, and each of these properties combine the natural aspects of it now at the moment as well. So I guess the health and wellness really complements this setup. And I believe when everything settles down, we all would need a good dose of healthy holiday, I guess. So how do you see this gelling up or coming together for you?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Andy. I agree. I think everyone will be pretty keen to get out into nature, and we're expecting a surge in health and wellness travel when this starts again, because things like day spas and similar establishments can't be accessed at the moment. Even group activities like yoga are proving, almost impossible. So people will be very keen to, reconnect with people that they were doing those activities with, to, rebalance their lives after such a significant disruption. And as everybody sort of has made the point, we've never seen anything like this before, so we don't really know what's going to happen. But I would be willing to bet that this will be something that I will see a strong surge in fairly early on, because it is quite an important part of people's lives. And we're still connect with our guests as much as we can, and we're hearing that constantly. We can't wait to come back. Really looking forward to the spa at Tamarind, or similar sorts of activities. So I think we'll see an early resurgence. And also we'd have some health and wellness events planned that needed to be postponed, and the majority of people have postponed rather than cancelled. So I expect we'll see a lot of those sorts of events in the industry when the social distancing starts to relax.
Thanks, Sue. I personally can't wait to have a holiday myself at the moment as well, to rejuvenate myself and the family as well. So, but good point there in terms of events, not to forget, because most of them either have been cancelled or a lot of them actually have been postponed as well. So we do expect to see them come back again, probably later during this year. Thanks, Sue. Let's move on to our next question. Right. Coping with crisis and best practices to safeguard in current demanding scenarios. Shankar, I'd like to ask you, could you tell us how should hotels adapt, and what Arise Hotels has done to align its current and future goals, perhaps?
Look, I think it's basically for all travel and hospitality companies. It's time to how do we survive, right? So that's basically what we are at. So I think it's basically what talk to vendors, talk to suppliers, and see are there any possibilities where we can reduce some costs, because we believe that if we share the pain, we have a better chance of surviving through this tough time, because we have got very high costs and overheads, etc. So do we have any contracts that we can look at and see, okay, can we save a few dollars here, can we save a few dollars, because it all adds up. The other one is look after your teams as much as you can, because this time will change. The only thing constant in life is change, and this will change too. So I think the teams are very anxious, but thanks to the government help, try and make sure that commercial teams, particularly sales, marketing, and revenue, are looked after. And as leaders, if we can look after them, they look after us when the demand comes back. Again, we have changed gears. We have been looking at other demand possibilities. Supporting government with quarantine rooms. We made a pitch to the government. We've been in talks with QHA. We've been in talks with AAA to say, okay, unfortunately, we've got mixed-use buildings, so we can't give them the full building, but we are there on a standby supporting the government, and also, with at-cost rooms, if not less than that, also in most cases. But best practice would be basically to see, whatever little demand is there. Like Mano said before, all market segments are open. Everything is open. Trying to get whatever we can. But I think it's the cost, because there's not much demand at the moment. But look at the cost and see if there's anything that you can leverage from your cost perspective.
Thanks, Shankar. I really like what you've just said. Change will be the only constant there. I couldn't agree more on your points and views. What's really interesting here is if you can create more demand possibilities, perhaps, and if you can look at more opportunities to expand, that's a good way to look at it as well. So in short, it's cautiously diversify. Now is the time to do that as well, if possible, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Shankar. Jackie, on best practices, so what will be your advice to hotels and accommodation providers when it comes to best practices, especially when we're being told all this while that this is a once in 100-year event?
So there can't really be a best practice yet, right?
Absolutely.
Well, for those that don't know, HSMAI is the Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association. So we run regular roundtables. We've had about 8 in the last month via webinar, obviously, with the leaders of sales, marketing and revenue management in Europe, America and Asia Pac. So I can give you a bit of an executive summary of what they're saying hoteliers should be doing. Firstly, is probably more personal, and that's around coping with a crisis yourself and with your team. So maybe give yourself some time to adjust to the crisis mode, and don't expect everyone on your team to go through shock and fear stages at the same pace as you do. Connect with your team members, encourage them to secure their basic needs like home, food, safety, education for their kids, that sort of thing first before you try to really push them into this high mode. There's a lot of these sort of webinars saying that you should be in high productivity mode at the moment, and that's hard in crisis time. And I think be flexible with your staff. I had someone give me a really good idea where people who, if you've got staff members who have kids at home in education, then they're starting a bit earlier, and then about 9:30 to 11, they're having a break where everyone goes offline and they help their kids with their schoolwork, and then they come back on and then have another break later and go back off. So things like that can make a lot of difference to how your team handles the crisis and the stress. And then probably to take some higher level things that haven't been mentioned already from the sales perspective, really goes back to basic, doesn't it? Stay close to your partners and customers, stay close to your travel agents, your corporates, wholesalers, and your local community. That's really the sales role during these sort of periods. In marketing, as well as I think we've mentioned before, cancellation policies, show flexibility and compassion, allow for refunds. Customers may have lost their jobs. It's an awful look for your brand if these people complain about just because you won't give them a refund, you'll only change the dates and things like that. Sort of a long-term brand strategy rather than a short-term cash flow issue. So I think marketing's role, whatever, you need to fight with finance to make sure you're sticking up for the customer at the moment. And then another thing from marketing is we'll probably see that restaurants will pick up first. Everyone wants to escape their isolation cells, don't they? So make sure you're ready for this first, even if you're a local motel in a country town. Can you put an event on, a dinner event or something that you're ready for when things come back? Maybe, paint your restaurant in the meantime. And then from a revenue management perspective, I guess there's time now to clean up your data. As Peter said earlier, look at your technology. Is there things you can improve? Is there more functionality you can use from the vendors you already have? And then, of course, regularly check your comp set. Who's changing their rates? By how much? Why are they doing it? Have they got a big government contract and you haven't? Or, look at why as well. Who's shifting distribution? Are your comp set hotels closing and how long for? And then we all know dropping rates won't drive demand in a period like this. So if you're going to adjust in small increments and don't be that hotel that drives your comp set pricing to the bottom.
I could agree more on that, Jackie. Thank you so much. Some really great points that you have raised here, I would say. I mean, it's time to really adjust now, isn't it? And self-reflect as to where do you stand and what the policies that you have, and just to be aware what your competitors are doing now at the moment, and connect with others to see, how can we sort of collaborate and be flexible at the same time. So it's all about the long-term outlook rather than anything. And as James has said before as well, that we need to be very customer-focused or very customer-centric from here on at the moment if you want to rebound.
True.
Thanks, Jackie. Let's move on to our next question. Actually, we haven't really addressed the social media part over here. So, the role of social media marketing at the time of crisis. So, what will be your advice around the social media marketing during such difficult times?
Social media has been very important for us during this time. It's a quick way for us to communicate to guests and to followers what's happening, because and the point's been made very well, like things are changing so fast and we've never done this before. We don't really know what to expect, and I think people are very forgiving of that, and open communication is really valuable, and social media is fantastic for that. It's also been a way for them to connect with us. Lots of messages of support, and anything from "Are you guys doing okay?" to "We can't wait to come back," and what can we do? What can we do to support you? So I think that's been very important, is for keeping connected with guests, and being able to respond quickly, because guests have questions about what's happening with their restaurants, what's happening with my reservation, can I move my booking, and it's been a very important channel for that. So responsiveness has been absolutely key.
Thanks, Sue. Really appreciate it. Moving on to our next question, the next big thing. So everyone's keen to know exactly what's going to happen, or what to expect next. So what, in your opinion, would be the next big thing happening, or in coming months, 6 to 12 months? What are the activities that hoteliers should stop right away, or continue doing and start immediately here on? I would like to ask all our speakers to quickly summarize very briefly on the next big thing. We'll start with Peter first. Peter, can you advise or let us know what do you think about the next big thing?
Yeah, certainly. So for us, from a technological point of view, what we see as being really front of mind for guests, and therefore for hoteliers, should be frictionless guest experiences. So I think what this entire pandemic has taught us is people are now more conscious and aware of their interaction with others. And I think there'll be a hangover of sorts with that. So if you think about all of the touch points that you have with the client when they walk in the doors, or even from before they walk in the doors, what can you do in terms of reviewing all of your antiquated practices to try and digitize the processes? And that gives guests at least the personal opportunity to say, I would like to have a frictionless experience at the hotel. And that can come from something as simple as a pre-check-in functionality. So we've seen the industry moving in this direction from a guest experience point of view for some time. The take-up's been a little bit slow, but the industry was moving in that direction already. But we really feel like the hotel guests, when they return, will want to have the ability to be able to choose their level of engagement with staff. So something as simple as, do I even need to complete a registration card? And I would ask everybody that's listening to the call, do you really need someone to come and sign a piece of paper when they check into the hotel, or in the taxi on the way to your facility, or the day before? Can they use or leverage technology through a guest portal or some other functionality to be able to take the check-in process up to a point where when they do arrive at the premises, they simply need to collect a key, or if you have an integration with a key system, they would be able to enter the premises and go straight up to their room. I think people are more conscious and aware of hygiene, and so giving people the option of frictionless experiences in the hotel will certainly make things, I think, a little bit better.
Thanks, Peter. So frictionless touch points, basically. I really like that. Moving on, so what will be the next big thing there?
For us, we've had to really reimagine the way that we do business and what our product can offer people. And takeaway is something that we talked about it every now and then, but it was never really something that we were considering until all this happened. It's actually been very successful. So I think we'll see a lot of restaurants that probably wouldn't have been in that takeaway space, so restaurants attached to hotels wouldn't have been in that space because it just wasn't part of their business. Now they're like, actually, there is a market here for that. So I think that's sort of the next big thing in our space.
Perfect. So again, exploring and diversifying your existing business models at the moment.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Jackie, what do you think, coming from this past experience, like what is coming our way?
What's coming our way? I think restaurants will pick up first and then domestic and local travel. If you look at the Australia-New Zealand market, it seems like both governments are going for eradication of the virus. If that happens, then maybe it'll open up between Australia and New Zealand, and maybe the Pacific will open up first before either country lets any other foreigners in. So they could be some key target markets initially. And of course, focusing your promotions on health and safety as well as escaping the isolation cell you're in at home. You might want to focus some of your promotions on how you've increased the health and safety of your travellers. And then with your stop-start ideas, I thought that you should stop standing down your sales, marketing and revenue people for a start because they're responsible for all your current and future revenue. So maybe not reducing there. Stop drastically reducing your rates. It won't drive demand. And then one thing I thought of to continue doing is responding to all your RFPs. We can see from a few of the stats out there that the pipeline for events and groups is only showing a 10% drop in the search thing. So they're still looking, they're still planning, so keep responding.
Jackie, thank you for addressing the elephant in the room. I really like your way of doing things in terms of a stop, pause, and start. So that's the way it should be people should be looking forward to. James, what are your views?
Andy, I'll take this opportunity also just to address one of the questions that came up in the Q&A, which is about airline pricing and how do we react as hoteliers. I think the biggest risk that we've got, and I'm sure everyone's following this one fairly closely, is what happens if we end up with a monopoly airline in Australia, and what impact that will have to air pricing. And certainly from our perspective, any great increase in airline pricing will be quite devastating, I think, to the industry as a whole. So we'd like to see what options come out of this if we don't end up with the duopoly of airlines that we've got today. So I think, one of the big opportunities we've got here is this is a bit like a reset moment. And for hoteliers to take this opportunity to start to work outside of segments and channels that you previously worked with before. I think it's a really good opportunity to, we've seen previously hoteliers being quite selective, maybe being in quite a fortunate position to only work with OTAs or only work with certain segments of the market. I think this is a really good opportunity to go back to those strategies we've been talking about for many years and starting to look at how you best set your hotel up to diversify those distribution channels. Reconnect with your wholesalers, reconnect with inbound tour operators and the like, just so that you don't have all of your eggs in one basket. So I think that's definitely something that everyone should be looking at doing. Secondly, I think we'll see a resurgence in B2B. We already started seeing in markets like the USA a really big growth in home-based travel agents and things like that. So I'd expect to see that segment growing and starting to see some more package distribution in that segment. Lastly, just to wrap up, I think everyone's kind of touched on this a little bit. Utilizing your technology, there are some things that we can do in the distribution space that are revolutionary. Look at how you can leverage your existing technology to drive drive all of your channels successfully.